I'm going to test my microphone. Desi, can you hear me?
I absolutely can.
All righty. I'm going to now switch it to the Latin function. Boy, Mackenzie's presentation is always provocative, isn't it?
Always,
Man,
always. A lot going on.
yeah, a lot going on indeed.
So we just had a presentation about legal issues in education and graduate education. So it makes us all go back to our home institutions, having conversations about what's happening, what's on the horizon.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? It would be interesting to poll our membership, like which institute, right, and like chart, like which topics that she hits gets more hits, because all of us identify with so many, but yet with variance. It would be just so interesting. It's just so much.
Yes. But she does, like Mary was saying, she does an amazing job of making it understandable and digestible.
She
So
sure does. She sure does.
And somehow uplifting. I know that's
Yeah,
crazy,
I know.
but it's
Yeah.
so easy on those things to just get overwhelmed and exhausted.
It's very good. It's very good. And Mary, I think I bungled your name entirely earlier today, didn't I? Did I
No,
reverse the name?
actually, you had it in the right order. It was good.
Oh, sweet.
So,
Okay.
um,
All right. Very good.
I
That's
got
pretty
name issues
exciting.
all the time.
I was so flummoxed by the microphone issue. I was just, all over the place. Anyway. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to just another exciting part of the conclusion of what's been just a wonderful conference. And of course, this is just a great highlight, the 3MT finals. My name is Jack Duraki, and I'm Dean of the Graduate School at Winthrop University. And it's also been my pleasure to serve as president of CSGS this past year. And I want to welcome you to the 2021 Regional Thesis, 3-minute thesis finals competition. Before I begin, I want to remind everybody to close all other programs or windows that they have on their computer. That'll definitely help streaming, provide a better streaming experience. Also, please, 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 please turn off your camera and microphone when not in use. That's definitely very important. And that should also help reduce the lag time with the Zoom streaming. Now, as most of us know, the 3-minute thesis, it celebrates the research of our graduate students, both doctoral and masters. It was developed by Queensland University in 2008, and it cultivates the students' academic presentation and research communication skills. It challenges students to effectively explain their research in just 3 minutes, 180 seconds, to a general audience. And boy, as you can imagine, this skill is critical, and it is not critical just for graduate students. It's critical for all of us because it is incumbent upon us to be able to speak to everyone of the value of our research and the value of higher education overall. So this is just an exciting yet important competition. And again, we're just so proud of all the students that have submitted this year to the CSGS conference and the competition. And for our finalists, wow, you're awesome, because to have made it thus far, you've already succeeded. It's just so impressive to look at this research. Now I'd like to introduce our judges. As I introduce each judge, please take a second just to say hello and wave so that we know everybody that is judging this competition live. First off is Dan Carson. Mr. Carson's a teacher at the Altamont School and director of the Altamont Heritage Panel. Dan, are you there? Can you wave?
Hi, everybody. As a former science journalist, I really have to tell you that I appreciate this contest so much, and congratulations for getting this far.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much for giving up your time.
My pleasure.
Bob Starbuck, Dr. Starbuck retired as an assistant vice president in clinical research in the pharmaceutical industry. Bob, are you here? Can you say
I
hello?
am right here.
Great. Thank you so much. And Cindy Kirk, Dr. Kirk is Vice President of Educational Services for Alabama Public Television. Cindy, can you say hello?
Yes, hello, good morning. I'm looking so forward to learning from all of you.
I know you are. I bet so. It's so great to have you. Thank you so much. Cindy.
Thanks.
Dave Williams. Mr. Williams is the chief meteorologist for ABC News 4. Dave, can you say hello?
Hey, everybody. So happy to be here and can't wait to see these presentations.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. All of us were expecting a green screen behind you, Dave, but that'll work. That's good.
The wife keeps it a little classier here.
Very good. Very good. Thanks for being with us. Just thank you all so much for giving your time to this competition. I know you're going to enjoy this as much as we all will. And just a reminder, there are monetary awards. Our first place winner is going to receive $1,000, second place, $500. And then the People's Choice Award will be $250. But again, all finalists will receive $150. Now, I'm going to introduce each presenter by name and presentation title. We will then show the presenter's pre-recorded video. And judges, you're going to have 90 seconds to score each presenter before we move on to the next one. And as a reminder, all the rules of the 3MT presentation are in front of you. Just going to touch on a couple here. Presentations are to be spoken word, right? So no poems or raps or songs. And they are not allowed additional props. And presentations are limited to 3 minutes max. And judges are going to score in 2 key areas: comprehension and content, and then engagement and communication. Please know that competitors are not going to be judged on the video quality or their editing capabilities. And that's very important because I know that can be kind of intimidating given this virtual presentation. But they will be judged just solely on the presentation, the student's ability to communicate research to a non-specialist audience, and the 3MT static slide. Now, third place is a People's Choice Award, and you can vote by either scanning the QR code included on this slide right here, or by clicking the link that Kim just added to the chat. So if you want to use the code, go ahead and scan that code or click the link now. Go ahead and do that. Get that ready, because the voting will close and those will not be available. So make sure to get that right now. Click on the QR code or the link that is now in the chat, because this slide will not be available again. Please remember the decision of the adjudicating panel is final. And I just want to thank everyone for being here. This is going to be an exciting competition. And I know, like you, I look forward to looking at these great presentations. So let's begin. First up is Jalea Clark from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And the title of her presentation is Mother's Diet as an Intervention for Arsenic-Associated Decreases in Birth Weight.
While much about childbirth seems magical, it's actually a tightly regulated process. During the first weeks of pregnancy, finger-like projections emerge from a ball of cells that will go on to form the embryo. These finger-like projections invade the wall of the uterus to form the placenta, connecting the baby's umbilical cord to its mother's blood supply. I know what you might be thinking. That sounds like a parasite, but proper placental invasion is critical to fetal growth because it allows for the transfer of oxygen and nutrients. Despite these features, the placenta is somewhat of a double-edged sword, also transferring toxic chemicals circulating in the mother's blood. My research aims to protect developing babies from a particularly harmful chemical, arsenic. Arsenic is a cancer-causing chemical typically found in contaminated drinking water. It's known as the king of poisons and the poison of kings because it's been implicated in several murders throughout the Middle Ages. More recently, maternal arsenic exposure has been associated with lower birth weight in several research studies. This is concerning because low birth weight is associated with infant mortality and an increased risk of heart disease later in life. As seen in my slide, arsenic hinders the placenta's ability to invade the wall of the uterus, constricting the flow of blood and nutrients. Fortunately, arsenic metabolism relies on B vitamins such as folate that we typically consume in our diets anyways. Among adults, B vitamin supplementation has been shown to improve the body's ability to remove arsenic and protect against arsenic-induced diseases. My research will evaluate whether B vitamins also protect developing babies from the harms of arsenic exposure. To test this, I'll use a unique data set collected from women who were exposed to arsenic during pregnancy. Using statistical modeling approaches, I'll evaluate whether the negative association between maternal urinary levels of arsenic and infant birth weight is attenuated or completely diminished by higher B vitamin levels. So far, I've seen that babies born to arsenic-exposed women who are also deficient in vitamin B12 weigh up to 50 grams less than their counterparts, who are also born to arsenic-exposed women with optimal levels of this vitamin. I'm so excited to complete this work as part of my dissertation because it has global implications. Around the world, hundreds of millions are exposed to arsenic through contaminated drinking water. This includes people living right here in my home state of North Carolina, where arsenic has been measured at levels exceeding government regulations. My research aims to protect one of the most vulnerable groups and could inform the dietary recommendations made to pregnant women. In fact, it just might change the meaning of the phrase eating for two. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Julia. And judges, you now have 90 seconds. And in this time, I just want to remind everybody to make sure that they're muting their microphones inside the presentation. We get feedback during the presentation because we can hear the video playing on your computer. So please make sure to mute your microphones. And as Andrea Gallardo reminds us, and turn off your cameras, please, as well. Thank you. Love seeing these chats congratulating these competitors. That's fabulous. Okay, we're going to move on to our second competitor, Caitlin May from the University of Alabama. And her title of her presentation is The Frontoparietal Network in Executive Functioning in Autism Spectrum Disorder.
This is my friend, Ethan. Ethan has autism and struggles to switch to new tasks at school. His teacher, Miss Davis, is confused because her previous student, Carly, who was also on the autism spectrum, had no problem switching to new tasks throughout the day. Ethan has an executive function impairment, but Carly doesn't. Executive functions can be thought of as the air traffic control system of your brain. They guide and regulate other brain systems so that we can achieve our goals. Executive function impairments have been proposed as a possible contributor to many of the difficulties individuals with autism experience. However, there's been a lot of inconsistencies in the research of this theory, so it's difficult to determine whether an executive function impairment really is a core feature of autism. First, not everybody on the spectrum has an executive function impairment, like Carly, for example. Second, while some research says that there's not enough activity in the front of the brain, especially in regions crucial to executive functions in individuals with autism, others say that there's too much activity in these regions. Because of this, it's really hard to explain why some children like Ethan struggle in Miss Davis's classroom, while others like Carly don't. So I calculated the weighted average of where the brain activity was focused in 16 fMRI studies. This resulted in 739 participants, 356 with autism and 383 typically developing, ranging in age from 7 to 52. This type of analysis is called an activation likelihood estimation, and it allowed me to identify overall patterns in brain activity during executive function tasks and draw conclusions from it. At first glance, the activity in the front of the brain and the prefrontal cortex looked pretty similar in both groups. However, in the autism group, this activity happened at distinctly different locations within this region. This was important because the prefrontal cortex is critical to executive functions. Second, in the autism group, this activity didn't extend past the prefrontal cortex into other relevant executive regions, like above and behind the ear in the parietal network. This means that the autism group may be relying on a very limited region of the brain, rather than a team of multiple brain regions to accomplish executive functions. Finally, when I compared the younger participants to the older, the autism group showed a different developmental pattern. The activity that I saw earlier in the front of the brain disappeared. Instead, there was no significant activation until the age of 25, at which point it was in regions of the brain typically unrelated to executive functions. This research gives us a picture of what the executive function network looks like in the autistic brain. This picture is critical to creating targeted interventions to better equip teachers and practitioners to support individuals on the spectrum, like my friend, Ethan.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Judges, you now have 90 seconds. Okay, thank you so much. Our next competitor is Austin Tapp from Old Dominion University. And Austin's presentation, as my timer goes off, and Austin's presentation is More Than a Bone to Pick, Letting the CAT Scan Out of the Bag.
For most kids, getting ready for school starts off with the question, what am I going to wear today? But unfortunately for some, that question is, what can I wear today? What can I wear so no one knows my right shoulder sits higher than my left one? What can I wear so no one sees that my hips are uneven? What can I wear to hide my body from bullies who might call me hunchback or monster? These are just a few of the thoughts racing through the mind of a teen who has been diagnosed with adolescent idiopathic scoliosis. Adolescent idiopathic scoliosis is a disease with no known cause that results in an irregular curvature of the spine. It affects over 2 million children in the US every year. Some children with adolescent idiopathic scoliosis have minor curves that can be easily managed. Some have moderate curves and must wear back braces. But what about those with severe curves? Well, those tens of thousands of children must undergo posterior spinal fusion surgery, a procedure often described as quite intense. It requires an incision down the full length of the back, followed by the removal of soft tissue and pieces of the spine. Next, screws are drilled into the vertebra, a steel rod is threaded through the screw heads, and a surgeon straightens out the spine by tightening the rod in place. To be sure everything stays straight, the bits of the spine that were removed earlier are ground into a paste and used to glue the vertebra to one another. The minimum recovery time for this procedure is 6 months. My dissertation seeks to enhance surgical planning using groundbreaking modeling techniques. It will make operations, like posterior spinal fusion, more precise and less invasive, improving outcomes and reducing patient recovery times. To do this, I begin with an image specific to each patient, like the CAT scan seen on the left. Next, I use artificial intelligence and computer algorithms to warp a generic mesh onto the CAT scan. By matching the anatomy present in the patient image, I am able to produce a highly detailed 3D version of the patient. The image on the right is an early outcome of this work. Upon completion of my dissertation, a full patient-specific torso will be reconstructed using these methods. This image reconstruction technique is revolutionary because it allows us to see anatomy that is invisible in current medical imaging. Ligaments, discs, and other soft tissues of the spine are now easily visualized in the patient's model. Surgeons can use this model to plan for operations like never before. The knowledge of the now visible soft tissues allows surgeons to determine ideal strategies for scoliosis correction. In the case of the posterior spinal fusion approach, this means fewer screws, smaller incisions, and better results. So that in less than 6 months, the question those tens of thousands of teens ask themselves is, what do I get to wear today? A tank top? Or maybe something with an open back? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Austin. Judges, we have 90 seconds. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you very much. Our next competitor is Ruzia Sultana Mohammed from the University of Houston. And the title of her presentation is Age Just a Number?
Mark Twain, a famous American writer, once said, "Age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter." Well, this saying sounds so convincing to us because we believe that age is just a number. However, the data on population and aging tells a different story. For the first time in the history of United States of America, the older adults aged 65 years and above are projected to outnumber the children by 2030. So what's the big deal? We all know that the appearance of human body changes as we age. But what about our internal organs? Have you ever thought about that? The functioning of the internal organs gradually decrease as we age. And one very important organ in our body that is affected by aging is kidney. Kidney, which is the size of your fist, contains 1 million tiny filters, which functions just exactly as the Brita filters in the kitchen. They filter the blood 40 times a day, each day, every day, from the time of our birth until our death. However, as we age, these filters cannot function properly, eventually leading to kidney failure. And a problem in the kidney negatively impacts the functioning of many other vital organs like heart, brain, lungs, and liver. So here comes my research to understand exactly what happens in an aging kidney and how to help it. I found out that the cells of aged kidney contains tremendous amount of stress, and there is a good protein in the cell which is considered as a master regulator of the stress. It regulates the stress by increasing the synthesis of many other good proteins. It binds to the DNA and leads to the synthesis of good proteins. Collectively, these proteins will help the cells cope up with the stress. I found out that the functioning of this good protein is decreased in the aging kidney. So I used a chemical derived from broccoli. Yes, you heard me right, broccoli. I know it's not very tempting, but the chemical that is derived from this broccoli has shown to be very important in increasing the levels of this good protein and also help the protein function better, leading to the synthesis of many other good proteins. As a result, the cells of aged kidney coped up with the stress better and led to better function. So I hope that my research would help the aged kidneys confidently say that age is just a number and help them function the way they have been doing from the very beginning of our life until our death. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Razia. Judges, you have 90 seconds. Great, thank you. So we will now move on to our next contestant, Sophie Borman from Auburn University. And the title of her presentation is The Effect of Concurrent and Non-Concurrent Administration of Mepivacaine Hydrochloride and Triamcinolone Acetonide on Inflamed Equine Osteochondral and Synovial Explants in Co-Culture.
Osteoarthritis is a progressive, incurable disease of both humans and animals. It is debilitating. It restricts the motion of that joint and limits movement. People cannot get up and down without experiencing crippling pain. Now, horses, they need to be able to move for survival. Osteoarthritis is the #1 cause of debilitation in horses in the United States. So, how do we prevent this problem? Well, we need a fast, accurate diagnosis, and we need fast, accurate treatment. In horses, they can't tell us where it's painful. So to make the diagnosis, we watch how they move, we see that they have a limp, and then we inject the joint with local anesthetic. We then watch them move again, and if now the pain is gone and the limp is gone, we have our diagnosis. Boom. Fast, accurate diagnosis. However, local anesthetics are slightly toxic to the tissues in the joint, so we have to be careful how we utilize them. The treatment for osteoarthritis in horses is intra-articular corticosteroid administration. Unfortunately, though the corticosteroid is a potent anti-inflammatory and gets rid of the clinical signs and could treat the limp, it also is unfortunately slightly toxic to the cells of the joint. So you can see how in combination, this may ultimately end up being a toxic environment for these cells. So traditionally in veterinary medicine, once we have our diagnosis, we have a little rest period before we then treat with corticosteroids. However, nobody has ever looked at a cellular level to determine if this rest period is necessary or in fact needed for the cells of the joint. In my research, I'm going to be taking cells from donor horses, cultivating them in the lab, and then exposing them to local anesthetic and corticosteroid, both individually at the same time and delayed, and determining which has the best response from the tissues, which is the best protocol for accurately diagnosing and treating these cases. It may be a small part of the fight against osteoarthritis, but anything we can do to help these horses is beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Judges, you now have 90 seconds. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Our next competitor is Angel Badewale from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And Angel's presentation is titled Conversion of Methane to Useful Oils via Bacterial Digestion.
Have you ever been in a major city and seen something that looks like the image on the top half of this slide? Or maybe you didn't see the fires directly, but you have a sensitive sense of smell like myself, and you could just immediately tell that something was off. Well, this is what it looks like when natural gas is being vented. Natural gas is one of the most commonly vented gases in the world, and it consists primarily of a smaller gas called methane, which is made in processes such as oil and gas production and treatment of wastewater from factories. Now, just in case you're wondering, the effects of methane venting are far more significant than just the sight of smoke in cities or a smell that makes us uncomfortable. There's actually a broader air pollution problem at stake here. When in the air, methane absorbs heat from the sun and traps that heat in the Earth's atmosphere. Ultimately, this results in an adverse effect on the temperature and the climate system of the Earth. So my research comes in as part of a larger scientific effort to mitigate this air pollution problem. In my thesis, I will be focusing on a process that converts methane to useful oils so that it doesn't have to be vented. The real heroes in this process are called methanotrophic bacteria. Now, methanotrophic bacteria are simply little organisms that are so called because of their superhero ability to digest methane. Yes, these organisms are able to digest methane that causes all of that air pollution problem and produce something useful out of it, and I think that's really cool. So how exactly does this process work? Well, as the bacteria digest methane, they produce oils in their bodies that can later be extracted, so we get something that looks more like the image on the bottom half of this slide. The oils produced are going to vary depending on the exact bacteria, but they could range from edible oils for human consumption to oils used as fuels in vehicles. Now, the central task of my thesis is to perform an economic analysis on the viability of this process. I will be conducting research on the cost of the process from start to finish, including the cost of growing and feeding the bacteria, as well as the cost of extracting the oils. I would then be comparing that cost to the price of the final oil products in order to determine how profitable the process is. Now, just to be clear, the question that my thesis is not answering is whether or not this is a process of value that's worth exploring. Because any process that's able to reduce the harmful impacts of methane on the earth is definitely worth exploring. Rather, the major question that my thesis answers is how exactly can we run this process in a manner that yields profit? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Angel. Judges, you now have 90 seconds. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next competitor. Tatiana Kucher is from the University of North Texas Toulouse Graduate School, and her presentation is Virtual Reality to the Rescue During the Pandemic.
Humans are social creatures. We all go through our lives building connections with other people. Sadly, socialization with our friends and families is becoming more difficult in the face of the pandemic. I haven't been able to visit my family in Ukraine for over a year and a half, and honestly, I don't know when I will. Your grandma, who may be in a retirement home, is unable to see her grandkids and is suffering from loneliness. There are many families who may live in the same city, yet unable to see each other for months. This pandemic has forced many of us to sacrifice our social connection. But what was the price of this sacrifice? Researchers found that prolonged social isolation leads to depression, anxiety, loneliness, and mental disorders. Is there anything we can do? To find the answer, I turned to modern technologies, specifically to immersive virtual reality. Virtual communications like Zoom and telehealth are already becoming more common, but virtual reality offers a whole new level of connection achieved through shared experiences that go beyond conversation, something we cannot do with Zoom. Just imagine, by simply wearing your VR goggles, you were immediately transferred to a bowling alley, a tennis court, a movie theater, or even a karaoke bar where you can spend time with your friends and make new ones. This technology is already here, but here's the problem. Because VR technology is so novel, very few people are actually using it, leaving its potential benefits undiscovered. Therefore, we don't know if VR can help us battle social isolation. Yet, this is where my research comes in. I will interview over 200 VR set owners and ask them how their social lives have been affected by the pandemic and whether VR has become an aid in this complicated process. I will ask them how they use VR to connect with other people and whether it has led to improvements in their social lives in the face of the pandemic. That's my contribution, and it is important because it will uncover and spread awareness of previously unknown benefits of VR and potentially improve our quality of life. We will also know how we can make this technology better, which will lead to more important research and more exciting VR discoveries. That's why tomorrow your grandma will not have to be isolated from her family. She will still be able to play with her grandkids, bowl with her friends, and lead a happy life. And while I may not be physically present with my family, we will still be able to nurture our strong social connections in the virtual world. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Judges, 90 seconds, and then we'll move on to our last competitor. All right, thank you. Our last competitor today, Dominique Lockwood, is from James Madison University and will present on ecophysiology of toxic cyanobacteria and their symbionts.
Currently, there is an organism that is putting our freshwater resources at risk. This organism is called a cyanobacteria, which you may have also heard referred to as blue-green algae, and it forms these massive algal blooms in lakes and also has the potential to produce a harmful toxin, which doesn't only harm us, but also our pets, livestock, and aquatic life. As recently as 2016, in the city of Toledo, Ohio, nearly 1 million residents went without clean drinking water for an entire weekend due to one of these blooms caused by a specific cyanobacteria called Microcystis. But Microcystis doesn't only bloom in Ohio. In fact, it has been recorded on every continent in the world with the exception of Antarctica. But what's even crazier is that scientists don't know why these blooms occur. In the past, researchers have examined abiotic or non-living factors, such as warm temperatures or nutrients from fertilizer runoff, as being the culprit for why these blooms become so detrimental. But no one has studied the living factors. What if, rather than one single organism, it's rather a complex assemblage of a variety of different types of bacteria that work together with the algae that make these blooms so prolific? I am taking the field in a new direction by using bacteria that I have isolated from entirely different sides of the globe. I traveled to both Lake Erie in Ohio and Lake Tai in China in order to collect samples during an active algal bloom. I then isolated the bacteria from the samples in the lab, and I used these bacteria to grow together with the algae to monitor their growth over time. I am also looking at the transcriptomic data so that I can assess what genes are actively being expressed by the bacteria that are helping promote the growth of the algae, which is important to know because if it's occurring in the lab setting, it may also be occurring in the field. The data generated by my research is critical for making informed policy decisions that take into account both the living and non-living factors to these blooms. Additionally, with the current rate of global climate change, it is imperative that these issues be addressed immediately.
Great, thank you, Dominique. Judges, you have 90 seconds. While the judges are doing their final totals, if you've not done so already, go ahead and submit your People's Choice Award. Go ahead and do that right now. People's Choice vote right now. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the judging for our final competitor, and the People's Choice voting is now closed. So thank you, everybody. First off, right now, what I want to say is Kimberly Eaton from UAB put this whole thing together. We're actually on her Zoom right now, and she has run this entire program and given me all these instructions so well written out that I couldn't possibly mess them up. So she was very smart to do that. But Kim, thank you so much for your hard work for making this as smooth a virtual competition as possible. What a tough dynamic. And you just did outstanding, outstanding work. Thank you so much. There she is. Thank you so much, Kim. Great stuff. So the voting is going to be tabulated, and then I am going to be taking my phone off mute because I will get texted the winners very soon. And then that way we will let everybody know the first place, the second place, People's Choice, etc. I'm going to make sure that my notifications are now on so that I don't miss it. Very good. So now you can be in suspense for the binging of my cell phone. I would love to invite, if they are comfortable, I would really like to invite the students to turn on their cameras. I know several of you are here. I think it would be great. I know that several folks would love to ask some potential follow-up questions on your research. We are always, every year, blown away by the quality, the importance of your work, and it gives all of us such hope, quite frankly, for going forward. And you are just so much better prepared than we were because you've done this and you've done just such a great, great job. So I'm turning on the chat now. If you've got questions for any of our student participants, please go ahead and put it in the chat and we can pull this out. But wonderful, wonderful job. You can see all the chats going to all of you. You did great stuff. So while we wait for those questions, I'd love to hear, how was it doing a virtual competition? Did you find that more stressful, less stressful? How did that go for you? Just feel free to unmute.
Hello. Yeah, recording the video was really, really stressful. I think as compared to the face-to-face competition, we had this advantage of redoing our presentation again and again, which is a plus, but it was equally frustrating too, with no audience in front of you, and you have to have that enthusiasm coming up, showing all the time and every time. So that was I think the main challenge of this virtual competition. But I'm glad that we all went through it, and all the presentations were great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that. Angel, you were nodding. So it was a challenge?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Razia said. We had that advantage to redo our presentation, but it was stressful making sure that we had the same energy with each iteration of the recording. But I think for me, I really enjoyed that aspect because I think I really grew in the process, like from my very first recording to the end. So
nice.
I'm grateful that I had that opportunity to redo, and I'm super surprised at myself at the end result. So I think there's definitely pluses and minuses.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Caitlin, what did you think of the exercise?
I really enjoyed the process. I think one of my favorite parts was that after I gave my presentation, I had a lot of people reach out and tell me that they also had a friend like Ethan in their life, meaning that they also had someone who was on the autism spectrum that they loved very much, as do I. And it was wonderful to get to hear their stories and talk about my research with people who it hopefully will impact, which is not an experience that you normally get to have when you're presenting your work in more traditional academic settings. And that was really meaningful to me to get a taste of like what that direct impact is and how and hear from other people about their stories.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that is really gratifying, and as you guys are embarking on your academic careers, I hope you hold on to that, right? Of the significance and importance of engaging with the community and listening and hearing, because that's who we serve, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. That's what we're called to do in our research and our work. So I'm so glad you got those experiences um, just through this process. So let me ask you this: how beneficial do you think it was just to approach this 3-minute challenge overall? Were you surprised? Was it easier than you thought, or was it more challenging? Because the deeper we get into our research, right, the deeper we go, the harder it is to come out, and not use theoretical terminology and all the wonderful polysyllabic verbs that we like to use. So how challenging was that for you all?
I think it was really challenging because it's very hard to find the balance between to not oversimplify things too much, but still to keep them clear enough for a non-technical person or person who is not in your field or who is not in the same degree program would understand. And I think this is the perfect setting to practice these skills, because this is our work. All of these.
Cindy, I am having problems with my chat. I just wanted to thank everybody. These were fabulous presentations. So difficult to judge. So again, I wanted to put this in the chat, so I wanted to be sure to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to see all of you, and congratulations, you all have done a marvelous job.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much. Tatiana, go ahead and finish what you were saying now.
Yes. So I really appreciated this opportunity to shape up our research, because all of these research topics, they're all our babies. They're so close to heart, and it's so important for us to be able to deliver this importance. And this competition has been a wonderful, wonderful platform to do that.
That's great. Austin, how about you?
Yeah, I'd have to echo what Tatiana said and what Caitlin said as well. I mean, I've gotten a few comments and messages sent to me on LinkedIn in the chat today, and from some other people who have had some family members or others close to them affected by scoliosis, and to hear that my work is being able to help these people in a kind of personal aspect is very inspiring and exciting. But it is difficult to get all the jargon removed from your presentation and make the audience, the general audience, understand exactly what we're doing here, because behind the scenes, it can be pretty complex, especially some of this imaging stuff. I bet Caitlin had to cut out a good amount of words, because I'm sure I have a neuroscience background. I'm sure there was a lot of things you wish you could have said, but a lot of that might have gone over people's heads. So yeah, just echoing everything that everyone said, and congratulations and great job to all of you, by the way. So.
Yeah. Did you all, Jalea, how about you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the most rewarding aspect has been being able to invite my family to watch.
Can you speak up just a little bit? I'm having a hard time hearing the mic, and maybe I'm just old and bad hearing. Could you?
Can you hear me now?
A little better, a little better.
Okay. I was saying the most rewarding aspect has been being able to invite my family to watch. And
oh, great.
That a lot of them know what I'm doing in graduate school now. And I found the most challenging aspect to be the timing, because I wanted to walk through every step of arsenic metabolism, because I wasn't sure if people understood what metabolism was.
Right.
And just, again, finding substitutes for like scientific jargon was really hard for me.
Oh, I'm sure it was. And were you all, what's interesting, in the past, as we've had these competitions, we've seen, and by the way, Sophie could not join us today live because she's performing surgery right now with the veterinary school. So we'll forgive her for not being here. But in the past, with the 3MT presentations and competitions, there was a real kind of community created, right? And we've all seen it at our own schools where, the students are really just supporting one another. I mean, yes, we want to win, and $1,000 is $1,000, but it creates a sense of community, and you get a little bit out of your silo. You see what your other students are doing. Have you found that same thing working on these virtually, where did you connect with the other students and feel kind of a community coming together as well? Go ahead, Razia.
Yes, definitely. So this time, since it was virtual, I thought we wouldn't get much help or we might be lost. But I should really appreciate our grad school dean, and also Dean of grad school, Dr. Sarah Larson, and then grad school office assistant Chastity. They organized these training sessions where we were asked to present. And also, even if the presentation is not ready, we were asked to share our research, and then talk about the process, how we are planning to do. So during that process, I found that the other students, like, we were giving feedback, like we were asked to give feedback on each other's presentations, and we were like, it was really cool to know that other students, despite of this competitive spirit, like we have to win, like they were giving these inputs and we were giving these inputs on slides. Maybe your slide should be like this, maybe you should talk about this, which is very great. Like, and also how much the university puts their efforts in student success is really, really appreciative, because they want us to shine and they take the time of their busy schedule just to make sure that they are there when we needed them. So for example, I had this problem with my PPT, to make sure, not a problem really, but to make sure that I'm not violating any copyright laws. So when I reached out to Dean Larson, she was prompt, and she was so kind enough to introduce me to other resources who could help me. And even they were really on top of my imagination, like they were there all the time, just making sure I get what I need. So that's really wonderful. So to have that kind of supportive environment would help anyone, I think, to make marvelous presentations.
That's great. That's great. Angel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I really want to echo that. I had the same, such great support from my graduate school. Dr. Farmer Kaiser is on here, and Dr. Demai. They really helped me out. This is my first time doing any kind of competition like this. I was really nervous going in. But like Razia, we had a lot of training opportunities, and they presented us with feedback from different professors at the university, and that really contributed to my growth process. But to answer your main question, I think I definitely did get to connect with other students who were in the competition at UL. But I'm really, really grateful for my connection with the graduate school now, just seeing how supportive they were of me in the process. I mean, it's really made a difference in my experience in the school in general. So definitely wanted to echo that.
Wonderful. Well, Mary just sent you a lovely note, so you can see that in the chat too. So that's really cool. Austin, how was it for you in terms of getting to know the other students?
It was pretty good for me. Dr. Brian Porter, who I think is on the call right now, sort of in charge for this competition at ODU, and he was kind enough to essentially hold a workshop or an open session every day of the week for the 2 weeks leading up to ODU's competition. And during that time, all of the competitors and finalists for ODU would join together, and we'd present to each other and get feedback and review. So we had a nice sense of community and engagement between our members to get ready for the competition. It also made me very interested in their topics, and so I'm hoping to meet up with them later in the year when they are ready to present and defend their dissertations or theses. So overall, I think I enjoyed it very much and had a great time meeting all these people from the different schools, also working with them and getting feedback from them as well. So.
Yeah, I imagine getting the feedback from other students, right? And everybody's in a different place, right? Now, how many of you are in PhD programs or doctorate programs? Okay, and master's programs? Because it's very good. So in the doctorate programs, how many of you will be graduating in the next year? Interesting. And the two master's students, do you plan to go on to get your PhDs, or are you thinking of going into industry right now? Angel, what do you think?
Yes, right now I'm thinking of going to get my PhD. I kind of wanted a soft landing into the world of research, but I really love my project, and I just want to keep going. So
That's great. Well, I mean, I'm just thinking, top of my head right here. I think you may have a good recommendation from Mary. I'm not sure, but I think she might write you a good letter of recommendation. Dominique, how about you? What are your plans?
So I'm graduating in May, and I have already applied to PhD programs in oceanography.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. And so you're graduating in May, so you hope to get started in August, just right through. Now, how many of you have gone, how many of you took breaks either in between your undergraduate and your master's degree or between your master's and PhD programs? Any of you take breaks or any in your academic progress? You did, Tatiana? Talk about your journey a little bit. Did you, from your undergraduate to your graduate work?
Yes, well, I actually moved to the United States to get my master's degree. And back then it was not related to virtual reality, but it was connected to language learning. So I'm an ESL educator. So I got my master's in TESOL. And that's when the break started, because initially I didn't want to start getting PhD immediately after school, because I felt like I've been in school for so long and I just wanted to experience some of the working environment. But I did work as an ESL instructor on a university level for several years before I decided to pursue a PhD in learning technologies, because then the passion for learning languages kind of combined with the instructional technologies and instructional design. And now it's even, I still do a lot of work with language learning using virtual reality, but also this interest in virtual reality transferred to other spheres like mental health and socialization and all of these things, which is the topic of my presentation for 3MT. So it's been quite an interesting journey that it was really not a straightforward journey. It went everywhere. I still think that there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to discover.
Yeah. And who else had a break in between? I think I saw another hand. Razia, what was your journey like?
So after my master's, it was during my master's program, I came in touch with research, the real world research. So during my master's project, I worked on diabetic cardiomyopathy, and I fell in love with that. And then after graduating from a master's, I had to take up a job at Cognizant Technology Solutions as a researcher, which is kind of a clinical trials database. But after being like 5 to 6 months into the job, I hated it. The reason is I love other things in research. So I thought I can't survive here. So I hit that resignation button, and then I thought of, applying for PhD programs. I'm from India, so I started applying for PhD programs back in India. And then I came to know the rewarding journey that US universities had to offer to the grad students. From family friends, I came to know about these details. So I started applying for PhD programs in United States. And then now I ended up in a fabulous lab of Dr. Lokanwala, and having Dr. Mustafa Lokanwala and Dr. Anis Bande as my co-advisor. It's such a rewarding experience all throughout. So yeah, that's my journey. So I'm right back to the area where I love and I want to be in.
Thank you for sharing that. Caitlin, how about you? What's your journey been like?
I came to grad school straight from undergrad. I got my bachelor's in educational psychology at Mississippi State, and then while I was there, I did a summer term at the University of Oxford.
Oh, okay.
In neuropsychology and neurolinguistics. And that was where I found this love for neuroscience. And the University of Alabama had an educational neuroscience program, which was the perfect fit because I wanted to study the brain, but my heart was still in education. And so this was a really great marriage between the two, where I could use neuroscience to assist teachers and students and still keep my work within the education realm.
Right. Oh, that's exciting. That's great stuff. Very good. Well, congratulations to all of you. I've been given a heads up that the final votes are coming in very shortly. Just wanted to take one more moment to congratulate all of you. Really, anyone that made any of the heats thus far means that they won the competition at their schools. And then to have come out of the heats to this point, just congratulations to you all. Again, those of us in graduate education, we're just inspired to see your work, and it's so wonderful to see you coming forward with such enthusiasm and such wonderful, important, significant content. So just keep up the great work. So thank you so much. Are the judges here? I also still want to give one last shout out to the judges. Dan Carson, Dr. Starbuck, Dr. Kirk, and Dave Williams. Are you all still here? Yep. Very good. Wonderful. So Dan, how tough was that to judge?
Oh my goodness. I'm still recovering. The stress of judging is sort of balanced out by just the sheer enlightenment and entertainment of these great presentations. And I wrote in the chat box, and I might repaste it in there. Anyway, it gives me hope as a former health and science journalist and general journalist and an educator too. This whole thing gives me hope that future generations of scientists and up and coming researchers will just be better at communicating with the public, with journalists, with the larger society, and with their own families. You know, my wife's a researcher, and hearing her try to explain what she does, I mean, you don't know how to start at square one. Starting at square one is important, or square two, maybe three, depending on who you're talking to. But y'all have done some incredible work, and the presentations were great. The narration was excellent. As a former radio professional, I just want to say that the scripts, or however you did it, it worked. I mean, they all worked. There wasn't one weak presentation in the whole bunch, which, as you pointed out, makes things pretty hard on us judges. But it was great. I'm just really thankful to be here. And it's kind of a dark time in general, but something like this gives me a little bit of hope. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Dan, and thank you again for being here. Dave, any last thoughts? We just got the final votes in. Any last thoughts you want to share?
Real quick, yeah, for a guy that ad-libs everything that he does, I don't know how you did those video presentations, because that's really hard. It's a lot easier to get up on stage and just nail it and walk off the stage and say it's over. To try to do it over and over and over, I struggle with that too. So hats off to all of the competitors. You did an awesome job. You should be proud of yourselves.
Great stuff. Bob, any final thoughts? Dr. Starbuck?
Needed to unmute myself. I said, these are all winners. There's not a person here that's a loser. And it reminds me of when I chaired a fellows committee for a professional society. And when you see the applications, it just gives you great pride in the skills and commitment that the younger generation has in just doing really good research and doing good things. So congratulations to all of you.
Great, well said. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending the finals of this year's 3MT competition, the regional for CSGS, done virtually. You all did just tremendous jobs. It is my pleasure to make these announcements of our winners. In second place is Austin Tapp. Congratulations, Austin. Well done on his presentation on scoliosis. That was wonderful. And then the winner of, we'll go to the People's Choice Award. The People's Choice Award winner is also Austin Tapp. Well done, Austin. You won the People's Choice Award as well. So congratulations. You really connected with the folks watching today. Well done. And then finally, the winner of this year's CSGS Regional 3MT competition, and the winner of $1,000 is Angel Badalaway from University of Louisiana Lafayette. Conversion of methane to useful oils via bacterial digestion. Congratulations, Angel. Well done. Well done. All of you did just such tremendous jobs. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Keep up the great work, and we look forward to seeing you and your future success. So well done. As a final announcement, we're going to end this Zoom meeting, and the conference will continue. We have time for a brief break. We will start the next session at 11:45, a brief break, and we'll begin with our award ceremony and presentation from ProQuest. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll see you down the road.